Have you ever been browsing the internet, going between seemingly unrelated forums, like, say, the Manjaro forum, the Roblox dev forum, the Nvidia dev forum, the GNOME forum, and even things like the Epic dev forum? I don't know, maybe it's just me, but as you go between these forums, you start to notice a sense of deja vu, like you were just on that exact same website. But clearly they're all something different, right? And there is a very good reason why they all look so similar. Much like certain CSS libraries, Bootstrap, now that I've pointed it out, you are going to see it everywhere. All of these forums are running the exact same forum backend software. They are running something known as discourse, not Discord, but expect me to mispronounce it at least once or twice. Now, Roblox, Nvidia, and Unreal are one thing, but if Manjaro and GNOME are using it, it's probably going to be open source. So if you go to the Discourse website, they do a really good job at telling you it's fully open source. The entire Discourse codebase is open and freely available to the public forever, at least if you scroll down like 3 or 4 pages, but they don't exactly do a great job at showing you the code. You might think, oh, it's like up here in the resources. Maybe it's like in this about section. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, there is this link right in the bottom right corner to go to the GitHub. They put it as far away from the top left as physically possible so that people just don't go and find it. There is really good logic behind the bottom right specifically. If you're a Western reader, you read from the top left to the bottom right. If you're going down the page, the last thing you're going to see is the link to the GitHub. Because on the website, what they're trying to do is sell you hosting. They don't want you to go and host it yourself. But if you do want to host it yourself, it's not even just an MIT project or a BSD3 clause. This isn't using some random permissive license. It's using GPL v2. It's licensed the same way as the Linux kernel. Now, Discourse is one of those really rare, but really impressive cases that managed to have this completely FOSS project. It's GPL v2, and then work out how to effectively monetize it. Monetize it to a point where it's one of the major standards for doing forums on the for having a web forum. And if you've never looked into it, you might be surprised to find out that Discourse is not the only successful FOSS forum software. Usually in a space, there'll be like a Critter, this really big FOSS solution, and everything else that matters is proprietary. Or there'll be Blender, and then everything else is proprietary. But in the case of forum software, a lot of the big forum software is also FOSS. Now, there are obviously proprietary exceptions, like Zenforo, for example, that is used for Unity, XDA, Mac Rumors, Tom's Hardware, a bunch of other things, and this is a very big solution as well. And when it comes to FOSS, there's other things like vanilla forums. Now, they are also licensed under GPL v2, it's very clearly FOSS. But the website does an even better job at not mentioning the fact that it's using FOSS. Like, they don't even make a big mention of it here. I don't know if there's even a link on the page to get to the GitHub. There might be somewhere, but it's certainly not on the main page. They just say, hey, look, you can test it out. You can pay for hosting. Give us money. Forget about the FOSS part. Give us money. And it's used by forums like the EA forums and the TeamViewer forums, a much more enterprise and corporate user base as opposed to something like Discourse, which is used for all manner of different projects. But these are just the major solutions that see a lot of usage and especially a lot of corporate usage. But there's plenty of other forum software out as well that is much lighter, but also not really used by that many projects. You have things like PHP BB, you have MyBB, Simple Machines, bbPress, which is a plugin for WordPress. And all of these operate at a core level in a similar enough way. They function as a forum. They don't have all of the extra fancy bells and whistles that something like Discourse might have, but they do the job. But speaking of WordPress, WordPress operates in a fairly similar way to Discourse and vanilla forums. So WordPress the project and WordPress.com are completely separate entities. In case you didn't know, WordPress actually is open source. All of the source code is licensed under GPL v2 or later, so, you know, basically as FOSS as you're going to get. But then there is the separate hosting website, WordPress.com. This uses the WordPress software and then sells hosting for anybody to go and use. But even though they are separate, a lot of the development and a lot of the funding comes from WordPress.com, basically because their entire business wouldn't operate without the software also being good. This is the weird dichotomy between the desktop and the web space. On the desktop, it's pretty much entirely controlled by proprietary software, controlled by Windows, controlled by macOS, but when you get onto the web, even just things like your web browser, besides Chrome and Edge, everything else that anybody cares about is going to be FOSS. If you start digging around in the software that web servers are actually using, you'll find FOSS everywhere. Just the fact that they're running Linux, that the forum software they're using is FOSS, the blog software they're using is FOSS, the JavaScript frameworks they're using are FOSS, CSS frameworks are FOSS. Basically anything that anybody cares about, FOSS is going to have a giant foothold. And this is probably just due to the fact that the space is controlled by developers, and it's much easier for everything to just be FOSS and then work out the monetization later. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it, and maybe you guys have your own thoughts. So let me know in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, remember to go and like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, go check out my Patreon, subscribe, Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'm out.
Daytime better call the bet. Ain't playing at your best, then you will get left. If it don't involve money, then I don't accept. If it don't involve money, then I don't accept.